The desert wind carried the scent of cordite and blood across the desolate landscape. Lieutenant Commander Catherine Reynolds watched through her night vision goggles as 6 hostiles approached the compound where an American aid worker was being held. Her breathing remained steady, controlled a metronome of calm amid the chaos about to unfold. Sandstorm actual, this is Reaper lead. 6 tangos approaching north entrance. Permission to engage, she whispered into her comms, her voice betraying none of the tension coiling within her muscles. The response came back instantly. Reaper lead, you are green to engage. I repeat, green to engage. Catherine gave a silent hand signal. 4 shadows detached from the rocky terrain around her Navy SEALs, moving with lethal precision. They had trained for this moment countless times, but training was sterile controlled. Here in the lawless border region, anything could happen. In the command center 2,000 miles away, Admiral James Richards watched the helmet cam feeds with narrowed eyes. Reynolds was one of his best, perhaps the best. But even the best operators could find themselves overwhelmed when the unexpected occurred. And in his 30 years of service, Richards had learned that the unexpected wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The mission had seemed straightforward. Extract Dr. Martin Holloway, humanitarian worker, captured 3 days earlier by an extremist faction. Intelligence suggested a small guard contingent, minimal resistance. But as Richards watched the feeds now, he could see the intelligence had been wrong. Very wrong. Catherine moved like water over stone, silent and purposeful. Her team had trained together for years, developing the wordless communication that separated the elite from the merely skilled. As senior officer, she led from the front, her M4 carbine an extension of her body, her every movement economical and precise. The compound loomed ahead, a squat concrete structure silhouetted against the starlit sky. No lights, no movement except for the patrol. Security cameras mounted at predictable intervals, amateur work. Catherine permitted herself a fleeting smile. Amateurs were dangerous in their unpredictability, but they made mistakes, and mistakes could be exploited. The first guard died without a sound, Catherine's combat knife finding the gap between his 3rd and 4th vertebrae with surgical precision. The second had time only to widen his eyes in shock before Petty Officer Delaney neutralized him with a suppressed shot to the temple. 45 seconds later, the exterior patrol was eliminated. Reaper 2, secure the perimeter. Reaper 3 and 4 with me. We breach in 30 seconds. Catherine's commands were clipped decisive. Each word carried the weight of absolute authority. The interior of the compound was a maze of narrow corridors and small rooms. The team moved in practiced formation, clearing each space with ruthless efficiency. 4 guards down, then 5, 6. The resistance was lighter than expected, another anomaly that sent warning signals flaring in Catherine's mind. Something's wrong, she vocalized into her comms. This doesn't feel right. Stay alert. They found Dr. Holloway in a central room, bound to a metal chair, his academic's frame hunched in exhaustion. Blood matted his gray hair, and bruises mottled what was visible of his skin. Catherine cut his restraints while keeping her weapon trained on the door. Dr. Holloway, I'm Lieutenant Commander Reynolds, United States Navy. We're here to take you home. The man's eyes, clouded with pain and dehydration, struggled to focus on her face. Behind you, he managed to rasp. Catherine spun just as 3 armed men burst through a hidden door in the wall. The first spray of bullets caught Petty Officer Martinez in the chest, his body armor absorbing most of the impact, but the force throwing him backward. Catherine's weapon barked 3 times and the lead attacker dropped. Delaney eliminated the second, but the third managed to duck behind a concrete pillar. Contact rear, came the urgent call from Reaper 2 outside Tumoa. Multiple hostiles approaching from the south ridge. In that moment, Catherine's world crystallized into absolute clarity. They were surrounded, outmanned, with a wounded team member and a civilian who could barely stand. Extraction point was 300 meters to the north. The original plan was compromised. Command, this is Reaper lead. We need immediate extraction from alternate point Bravo. Repeat, alternate point Bravo. The radio crackled with static. Then negative Reaper lead. Area too hot for air support. Primary extraction point only. I repeat, primary extraction point only. Catherine felt time slow as she processed the implications. Primary extraction meant crossing an open area now swarming with hostiles. The odds of getting her entire team and the package out alive were minimal. That's when she saw it, the detonator half concealed beneath Holloway's chair. Her blood turned to ice. Everybody out! Now, she commanded, grabbing Holloway and practically carrying him toward the exit. Building's rigged to blow! Martinez stumbled to his feet, favoring his left side where the bullets had struck his armor. Catherine could see from his labored breathing that at least one rib was broken, possibly puncturing a lung. He wouldn't make it 300 meters to the primary extraction point. Reaper 2, fall back to secondary position. Prepare for hot extract. Her voice carried the unmistakable tone of a commander who had made a fateful decision, one that headquarters had explicitly denied. The explosion ripped through the night behind them as they cleared the building's perimeter, the shockwave lifting Catherine off her feet and slamming her into the hard-packed earth. Her ears rang, dust filled her lungs, but she was moving again within seconds, helping Holloway up, signaling her team forward. The firefight that followed would later be described in classified after-action reports as a masterclass in tactical withdrawal under extreme duress. What those sterile reports wouldn't capture was the blood-soaked reality, the way Catherine carried Martinez the last 100 meters when his strength gave out, the precision of her one-handed shooting that dropped 3 pursuers while supporting her wounded teammate, the split-second decision to use their last thermite grenade to seal a choke point and buy precious seconds. Nor would those reports mention how, when faced with a final obstacle, a sniper positioned between them and the extraction point, Catherine handed Holloway off to Delaney and moved forward alone, drawing fire so her team could maneuver to safety. The bullet caught her high on the left shoulder, spinning her around but not stopping her advance. 3 measured shots later, the sniper threat was eliminated. By the time the unauthorized helicopter touched down at extraction point, Bravo Catherine had lost nearly a pint of blood, but her team and their package were intact. As the Black Hawk lifted into the night sky, Catherine pressed a field dressing to her wound and keyed her comms one last time. Command, this is Reaper Lead. Package secure. All team members accounted for. Request medical upon arrival. What she didn't need to say was that she had directly disobeyed a direct order from command. The consequences would be waiting when she landed. In the darkness of the helicopter bay, Dr. Holloway reached out a trembling hand to grasp hers. You saved my life, he said, his voice barely audible above the roar of the rotors. But they never intended for you to find me alive. I was bait. Catherine met his gaze, the implications settling like lead in her stomach. If Holloway was bait, then someone had compromised the mission from the inside. Someone wanted her team eliminated, and that someone had the clearance to access mission parameters. 3 days later, Catherine stood at rigid attention in Admiral Richards' office at Naval Special Warfare Command. Her shoulder was bandaged beneath her immaculate uniform, the pain a constant reminder of how close the mission had come to complete failure. Richards studied her with an unreadable expression, his weathered face bearing the lines of decades of difficult decisions. At 62, he was a legend in the special operations community, one of the architects of modern naval special warfare doctrine, and a veteran of conflicts stretching back to the Cold War. Your after-action report makes for interesting reading, Commander, he said, finally tapping a manila folder on his desk. Disobeying a direct order, requisitioning an extraction asset without authorization, engaging a numerically superior force instead of evading and escaping. Catherine remained silent, eyes fixed on a point 6 inches above the Admiral's head. By all rights, I should have you court-martialed. Richards leaned back in his chair. But then I'd have to explain why I ordered you to abandon a wounded teammate in a high-value package. And more importantly, I'd have to explain why intelligence that crossed my desk was so catastrophically wrong. He stood moving to a wall map of Fort Benning, Georgia. We've known for months that we have a leak somewhere in the command structure. Someone feeding operational details to hostiles. What we didn't know was how high it went. Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication of her surprise. Your mission wasn't just about extracting Holloway. It was a controlled information leak. Only 6 people knew the full operational details. One of them betrayed us. With respect, sir, using my team as bait without our knowledge was a necessary evil. Richards cut her off. And one I don't take lightly. Martinez will make a full recovery, by the way. The doctors say he'll be back on active duty within 6 weeks. Relief flashed across Catherine's features before she could suppress it. Richards noted it with a slight nod. I need someone I can trust for a special assignment. Someone whose loyalty is beyond question and whose judgment, even when it contradicts direct orders, has proven sound. He handed her a dossier with classified stamped in bold red across its cover. Fort Benning Advanced Training Facility. On paper, you'll be installing and configuring a new secure communications network. Your cover will be Specialist Rebecca Taylor Technical Operations. In reality, you'll be evaluating officer candidates for potential recruitment into a new Special Operations Task Force. And more importantly, you'll be continuing our hunt for the leak. Catherine accepted the folder, her expression giving away nothing. When do I leave? Tomorrow. 0600. This is a long-term, deep cover assignment, Commander. No one at Benning will know your real identity, except for Master Sergeant Williams, your liaison on base. Catherine nodded once, then hesitated. Sir, if I may ask, why me for this particular assignment? Richards turned to look out his office window where Naval Special Warfare trainees were conducting drills on the distant parade ground. Because you see people for who they really are, not who they pretend to be. And because you have something to prove. He faced her again, his gaze direct and challenging. Your sister's death during that training the accident 3 years ago still drives you, doesn't it? The first woman selected for the Special Reconnaissance Program and equipment failure takes her from us. Catherine's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Her sister Jessica had been a pioneer breaking barriers that Catherine had later shattered. Jessica's death during what should have been a routine training evolution had been ruled an accident, but Catherine had always harbored doubts. Some in command still believe women don't belong in Special Operations, Commander. They point to incidents like your sister's as evidence. Others believe the opposite, that we're weaker for not fully utilizing all available talent. I'm giving you the chance to help settle that debate once and for all. I understand, sir. No, Commander, I don't think you do. Not yet. Richards handed her a second, thinner folder. This is the personnel file for Cadet Nathan Parker, son of General William Parker. Top of his class, physical scores off the charts. And according to my sources, the most arrogant, entitled piece of work to come through Benning in a decade. Catherine scanned the file quickly, noting the impressive academic and physical testing results, alongside comments from instructors that painted a picture of a young man who relied too heavily on his family name and natural abilities. Parker leads the current training class. If there's a leak at Benning, the smart money says it's connected to him or his inner circle. His father has made powerful enemies over the years, including some outside our borders, who would pay handsomely for access to his son. You want me to get close to him. I want you to evaluate him, objectively. If he's the source of the leak, I want him eliminated from the program. If he's being used unknowingly, I want him turned into an asset. And if he's innocent, I want him protected and developed. He could become one of our best or our worst liability. Catherine closed the file. And my cover as a communications specialist gives me access to monitor-based communications. Exactly. You'll be installing the new ShadowNet system, a quantum encrypted communications platform that's supposed to be unhackable. Only 5 people in the world understand how it truly works, and you're about to become the 6th. When was the last confirmed intelligence leak? 6 weeks ago. Operation details for a SEAL team deployment to the South China Sea. The team walked into a prepared ambush. We lost 2 good men. Richard's expression hardened. That's why this isn't just about finding officer candidates, Commander. This is about stopping a killer before more blood is spilled. Catherine snapped to attention. I won't let you down, sir. I know you won't. Richards returned her salute. One last thing, Commander. The men you'll be evaluating, they won't see you as Lieutenant Commander Reynolds with a Silver Star and 3 combat deployments. They'll see a female communications specialist. They'll underestimate you, dismiss you, maybe even harass you. That will be their mistake, sir. Yes. Richards allowed himself a tight smile. It certainly will be. The following morning found Catherine on a military transport to Georgia, her shoulder throbbing with each minor turbulence bump. She had spent the night studying the personnel files of every officer candidate and instructor at Fort Benning, committing faces, backgrounds, and psychological profiles to memory. Gone were her officers' insignia and the quiet confidence they provided. In their place, the simpler uniform of a specialist, her hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her face scrubbed of makeup. The transformation was more than physical, it required a complete psychological shift. For this mission to succeed, she needed to become Rebecca Taylor completely. Fort Benning sprawled across the Georgia landscape like a small city, its training grounds and barracks home to thousands of America's elite warfighters in training. As Catherine stepped off the transport, the familiar sounds and smells of a military base enveloped her. Diesel exhaust from troop carriers, the distant pop of rifles on the range drill instructors barking commands at formations of running trainees. Master Sergeant James Williams met her at the airfield, a weathered veteran whose deeply lined face suggested he'd seen more combat than most men twice his age. At 55, he should have retired years ago, but men like Williams didn't know how to exist outside the structured world of military service. Specialist Taylor, he greeted, her emphasis subtle but present on the false rank. Welcome to Fort Benning. Your quarters are prepared and the communications center is expecting you at 0800 tomorrow. Thank you, Master Sergeant, Catherine replied, falling into step beside him as they walked toward a waiting Humvee. Her body language had already shifted slightly, less confident, slightly more deferential. Rebecca Taylor wouldn't carry herself with a commander's authority. Admiral Richards briefed me on your true purpose here, Williams said quietly once they were in the vehicle and away from potential eavesdroppers. Rest assured your secret is safe with me. I appreciate that, Master Sergeant. What can you tell me about the current officer candidate class? Williams grunted as he navigated the Humvee through the sprawling base. Technically proficient, physically impressive, and absolutely convinced of their own superiority. He shot her a sidelong glance, especially Parker and his inner circle. Tell me about them. Parker's the alpha, natural leader but leads through intimidation as often as inspiration. His right hand is Cadet Thompson, not as naturally gifted, but cunning, would follow Parker into fire. Then there's Rodriguez, quiet, observant, probably the most thoughtful of the bunch, and Walker, the only female candidate in the group, constantly having to prove herself. And how does the class respond to female personnel in general? Williams' grip tightened on the steering wheel. Depends on the woman and the role. Female combat instructors get grudging respect eventually. Support staff get treated like furniture, at best targets at worst. So I should expect some resistance. Commander, with all due respect, some resistance is what you feel when meeting your girlfriend's parents for the first time. What you'll face in that training center is more like walking into a lion's den wearing meat-scented cologne. Catherine allowed herself a small smile. I've faced worse odds. No doubt. Williams pulled the vehicle up to a nondescript barracks building. These are your quarters. Secure communications terminal inside is keyed to your biometrics. The ShadowNet equipment arrived yesterday and is locked in storage at the communications center. As Catherine retrieved her duffel from the back of the Humvee, Williams added, "One more thing, Commander. General Hayes arrived this morning for an inspection tour." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly. General Marcus Hayes, the SOCOM commander. The same. Word is he's traveling incognito as a master sergeant to observe the candidates without them knowing who's watching. Old school technique, but effective. This was an unexpected complication. Hayes was Richards' superior and one of the most decorated special operations officers in modern military history. His presence suggested the leak might be even more serious than Richards had indicated. Understood. Thank you for the heads up, Master Sergeant. Good hunting, Commander. I'll be your primary contact while you're here. Anything you need, day or night. With a crisp nod, Williams drove off, leaving Catherine to settle into her temporary home. The barracks were Spartan but private, a small mercy for which she was grateful. Catherine secured her few belongings and spent the evening reviewing the layout of the base, familiarizing herself with patrol schedules and security camera positions. If she needed to move undetected later, this preparation would prove invaluable. Morning arrived with the distinctive sounds of a military base coming alive, reveille the cadence calls of troops on morning PT, the metallic clatter of the mess hall preparing to serve thousands of hungry trainees. Catherine dressed carefully in her specialist uniform, checking to ensure her appearance was correct but unremarkable. The shoulder wound from the mission had been downgraded in her cover story to a minor training injury. The communications center was housed in a secure building near the center of the base, a two-story concrete structure surrounded by a perimeter fence and guarded by armed MPs. Catherine presented her credentials and was escorted to a windowless room filled with server racks and specialized communications equipment. "This is where you'll be installing the new system," the communications officer, a Lieutenant Davis, informed her. "The current setup handles all secure communications for the training center, but it's slated for replacement with your ShadowNet." Catherine nodded, already analyzing the existing setup with a practiced eye. I'll need to run diagnostics first, then begin the physical installation. The transition needs to be seamless. We can't have any downtime in communications. Understood. The equipment cases are in secure storage. I'll have them brought up. Davis hesitated. I should warn you, we're hosting a major training exercise in 3 days. Red cell scenario. The entire communications system will be stress tested during the exercise. I'll be ready, Catherine assured him, though internally she noted the timing. 3 days to install an advanced system and begin her investigation of Parker in the potential security leak. For the next 6 hours, Catherine immersed herself in the technical work, establishing her cover identity through visible competence. By late afternoon, she had mapped the entire communications infrastructure and identified several potential security vulnerabilities, any of which could be exploited by someone with the right access and knowledge. It was while examining a secondary server room that Catherine encountered Nathan Parker for the first time. She was kneeling beside an access panel, tools spread around her, when the door swung open and 3 officer candidates entered their conversation, cutting off abruptly at the sight of her. Well, what do we have here? The tallest of the 3 stepped forward, his bearing unmistakably that of someone accustomed to authority. Catherine recognized him immediately from his file photo, Cadet Nathan Parker. 6'2", broad-shouldered, with the chiseled features that seemed almost standard issue for military dynasty families like his. Catherine didn't look up, continuing her work with methodical precision. I asked you a question, Specialist. Parker said, his voice hardening with command. Now Catherine paused, turning slightly to acknowledge his presence without rising. Specialist Taylor, sir. Communications, installing new equipment. Parker's companions, Thompson and Rodriguez, she presumed exchanged amused glances. Parker circled around to see what she was working on, deliberately invading her personal space. That's a lot of fancy tech for a glorified IT worker, he remarked, nodding toward the specialized diagnostic equipment she was using. You sure you know what you're doing with all that? Catherine resumed her work, her movements unhurried and precise. Yes, sir. The lack of elaboration seemed to irritate Parker more than any defense might have. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We're looking for the M110 rifle components that were supposed to be delivered for our advanced marksmanship training, Thompson said, stepping forward. Davis said they might be in secure storage down here. Wrong room, Catherine replied simply. Armory storage is 2 doors down on the left. She could feel their continued presence, their eyes on her back as she worked. The tension in the room shifted subtly. What had begun as casual superiority was transforming into something closer to annoyance at being dismissed so easily. You new here, Specialist Taylor? Parker asked, his tone deliberately casual now. Yes, sir. Arrived yesterday. And they already have you working on our secure communications. Seems like important work for a new transfer. The implication was clear. Either she wasn't qualified or there was something suspicious about her assignment. Catherine finally turned to face him fully, her expression neutral, but her eyes meeting his directly for the first time. I go where I'm ordered, sir, just like you. Something flickered in Parker's eyes, surprise perhaps at the subtle reminder that despite his family connections and natural aptitude, he was still subject to the chain of command like everyone else. Before he could respond, the door opened again, and Master Sergeant Williams entered, his timing suspiciously perfect. Cadets, he barked, your advanced weaponry session begins in 5 minutes. Unless you're planning to shoot the enemy with your sparkling personalities, I suggest you get to the armory. Parker straightened, his attention shifting to Williams. Yes, Master Sergeant, we were just headed there. As the 3 cadets filed out, Parker paused at the door, glancing back at Catherine with an expression that promised their interaction wasn't concluded. Then he was gone, leaving Catherine alone with Williams. I see you've met our star pupil, Williams remarked dryly. Charming, Catherine replied, returning to her work. Has he always been like that? Born with a silver spoon in one hand and his father's expectations in the other. To be fair, he's genuinely gifted, best marksman in his class, exceptional tactical mind. If he could get over himself, he might actually become the leader his father wants him to be. The following evening, Catherine was making her way back to her quarters after a long day of work on the ShadowNet installation. The base was quieter at this hour, most personnel either at dinner or relaxing in their barracks. As she rounded a corner near the supply building, she nearly collided with Parker and Thompson. Well, look who it is, Parker said, his tone carrying an edge of hostility that hadn't been present during their earlier encounter. Our new communications expert out for an evening stroll. Catherine attempted to step around them. Excuse me, cadets. I need to get back to my quarters. Thompson shifted to block her path. What's the rush, specialist? We were just talking about you. About how someone who just arrived yesterday shouldn't have access to our secure systems, Parker added, stepping closer. Seems suspicious, doesn't it? Catherine maintained her composure, careful to react as Rebecca Taylor would not as Lieutenant Commander Reynolds. I'm following orders just like you should be. Parker's expression hardened at the implied criticism. In one swift motion, he grabbed Catherine by the collar of her uniform and pushed her against the wall of the supply building. His forearm pressed dangerously close to her throat. You need to learn your place around here, specialist. Parker growled, his face inches from hers. Some of us have worked years to get where we are. We don't appreciate outsiders coming in and acting like they own the place. Catherine remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled despite the pressure on her collar. She could have neutralized Parker in at least 7 different ways, but that would blow her cover instantly. Instead, she kept her gaze calm, looking past him rather than meeting his eyes directly. Her lack of fear or resistance seemed to infuriate Parker further. He tightened his grip on her collar, the fabric now pressing uncomfortably against her throat. Nothing to say now, he taunted, misinterpreting her silence as submission rather than the calculated restraint it actually was. Parker Thompson, Master Sergeant Williams' voice cut through the tension like a knife. He approached rapidly from the direction of the mess hall, his weathered face set in a mask of controlled anger. Stand down immediately. Parker released Catherine and stepped back, but his expression remained defiant. We were just having a conversation, Master Sergeant. That's not what it looked like from where I'm standing, Cadet Bam, Williams said, his voice dangerously quiet. Report to the track field at 0500 tomorrow. You'll be running until I get tired of watching you. Yes, Master Sergeant, Parker replied stiffly. As Parker and Thompson walked away, Williams turned to Catherine. You all right, specialist? Catherine straightened her uniform, her demeanor professional once more. Yes, Master Sergeant, nothing I can't handle. Williams watched the retreating cadets with narrowed eyes. Parker's going to be trouble. His father's influence has given him an inflated sense of entitlement. I've dealt with his type before, Catherine replied simply. What Williams didn't say, and what Catherine already knew, was that Parker had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had physically confronted someone who could have ended his military career with a single move. And someday soon he would learn exactly who he had tried to intimidate. Carry on, specialist, Williams said, finally giving her a nod that contained a hint of respect. Catherine nodded absently, her focus already returning to the task at hand. I need access to the secure communications logs for the past 6 months. Any unusual transmissions, pattern deviations, unauthorized access attempts. I'll have them transferred to your secure terminal. Anything else? The rifle components they were looking for, M110s, are sniper platforms. Is advanced marksmanship part of their current training rotation? Williams frowned. Not for another 2 weeks. Those rifles were requisitioned early at Parker's request. His father pulled some strings. Interesting. Either Parker was showing initiative by preparing ahead, or there was another reason he wanted access to sniper equipment outside the normal training schedule. Either way, it was worth noting. I'll need observation access to their training sessions, Catherine said, as much as possible without drawing attention. I'll arrange it. Starting tomorrow, you'll have a secondary assignment inspecting communications equipment throughout the training areas. That should give you plausible reasons to be wherever you need to be. Williams moved toward the door. Good luck, Commander. Remember, these aren't just cadets. They're the next generation of operators. If there's a leak among them, then we have a bigger problem than anyone realizes, Catherine finished for him. After Williams departed, Catherine continued her work, but her mind was processing the encounter with Parker. The cadet had revealed several things in their brief interaction. Arrogance, yes, but also keen observation and a quick analytical mind. He had immediately questioned why a new transfer would be given such an important assignment. That spoke to either paranoia or sound tactical thinking, perhaps both. Later that evening, Catherine made her way to the base armory under the pretense of checking communication equipment there. The weapons specialist on duty, a grizzled sergeant named Torres, barely acknowledged her presence as she inspected the wall-mounted communications panel. "Heard you met Parker and his boys today," Torres commented suddenly, not looking up from the rifle he was cleaning. Catherine kept her response casual. "Word travels fast." "Small base, smaller community of specialists." Torres reassembled the weapon with practiced efficiency. "Those boys think they own this place. Parker especially." He seemed confident. Catherine allowed, careful not to show too much interest. "Confident?" Torres snorted. "Kids showed up last month and 2 weeks later told me my armory was inefficiently organized and offered to help me implement a superior system. His daddy might be a 4-star, but down here experience trumps rank every time." "How did he take that?" Torres grinned. "Let's just say he's still doing push-ups when I see him coming." The smile faded. "But he's not stupid." After that, he switched tactics, started asking about my service record, where I'd deployed weapons I'd used in combat. Turned on the respect real thick. Next thing I know, he's got special access to test fire any weapon in the armory for training purposes. Catherine noted this with interest. Parker was adaptable, capable of changing approach when direct authority failed. A valuable trait in a leader, but also in someone conducting covert intelligence gathering. "The communications equipment looks fine," she said, closing the access panel. "Thanks for letting me check it." "Anytime, specialist. We support personnel have to stick together in this testosterone factory." Torres winked. "If Parker or any of those other hotheads give you trouble, you come see Torres. I'll sort them out." Catherine thanked him and left, adding Torres to her mental list of potential allies on base. The interaction had been illuminating. Parker was clearly skilled at identifying key personnel and gaining their trust or manipulating them for access. The question was whether this was simply the natural politicking of an ambitious officer candidate or something more sinister. The next day found Catherine in the advanced training facility, ostensibly checking communication relays while observing a hand-to-hand combat session. The large mats were occupied by pairs of sweating cadets grappling and striking under the watchful eye of a combat instructor. Parker was immediately noticeable not just for his height and build, but for the fluid efficiency of his movements. He was currently demonstrating a takedown technique on Thompson, who, despite his own considerable skill, found himself repeatedly slammed to the mat with controlled precision. "Again," the instructor called out. "Parker, talk us through your weight distribution during the transition." As Parker explained the technical aspects of the move, Catherine noted how the other cadets listened attentively. Despite his arrogance, he clearly commanded respect for his abilities. Even more interesting was the female cadet Walker, who watched with particularly intense focus, mentally rehearsing the movements as Parker demonstrated them. After the session, as the cadets filed out toward the showers, Catherine noticed Walker lingering behind, approaching the instructor with a question. From her position, Catherine couldn't hear the exchange, but the instructor's dismissive body language and Walker's stiffening posture told their own story. Catherine waited until Walker exited alone, then timed her own departure to cross paths with the female cadet in a quiet corridor. "Excuse me," Catherine called softly. "Cadet Walker, right?" Walker turned, surprise evident on her face at being addressed by a communications specialist she'd never met. "Yes. I couldn't help noticing your question to Sergeant Miller back there about the counter to Parker's takedown." Walker's expression turned guarded. "You were watching our training." "I was checking the communications equipment," Catherine clarified, gesturing to the tool bag she carried. "But I used to compete in judo. That counter you were asking about, it's about timing more than strength." For a moment, Walker seemed torn between suspicion and interest. Interest won. "Miller says I don't have the upper body strength to execute it properly." "Miller's wrong," Catherine said simply. "The technique doesn't require exceptional strength if executed correctly. It's about leverage and momentum." Walker studied her with newfound curiosity. "You sound like you know what you're talking about." "For a comms specialist." Catherine smiled slightly. "People contain multitudes, cadet. Some of us even have lives outside our MOS." For the first time, Walker's serious expression cracked into something approaching a smile. "I'm Sarah," she offered, "and I'd kill for some pointers if you really do know that counter." It was an opening exactly what Catherine had hoped for. "Rebecca," she replied, "and I might be able to help if you don't mind training with support personnel." Right now, I'd train with the base mascot if it would help me take Parker down just once. Sarah glanced at her watch. I've got to run tactical planning in 5 minutes. But maybe tomorrow, early morning before regular PT. The auxiliary gym is usually empty at 0500. I'll be there, Catherine promised. As Sarah hurried away, Catherine allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The first connection had been made an avenue into the cadet social structure through someone who might have valuable insights on Parker and his inner circle. Catherine spent the remainder of the day continuing her installation of the ShadowNet system, creating a legitimate cover for her presence in restricted areas of the base. By evening, she had established enough of the network infrastructure to begin passive monitoring of communications. It was while testing a terminal in a secluded corner of the communications center that she overheard a conversation from the adjacent room, Parker's voice unmistakable in its confident timbre, speaking with someone whose responses were too low to make out clearly. My father says the new system is supposed to be unhackable, Parker was saying. Quantum encryption, real cutting-edge stuff, a murmured response. No, I haven't seen the full specifications yet, but apparently it's being fast-tracked for installation across all SOCOM facilities by year's end. Billions invested. Another indistinct response. That new specialist Taylor. She's the one installing it. Doesn't look like much, but must know her stuff if they trusted her with this. Catherine stilled her breathing, listening intently. Might be worth getting to know her better, Parker continued. Technical expertise like that could be useful. Plus, she clearly needs someone to show her how things work around here. A laugh, then footsteps receding. Catherine remained motionless, processing the exchange. On the surface, it seemed like typical ambitious cadet behavior, gathering information, identifying valuable contacts, positioning for advantage. But there was something in his interest in the ShadowNet specifications that raised a flag. Was it simple curiosity about cutting-edge military technology or something more targeted? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Master Sergeant Williams entered, his expression grave. Commander, he said quietly, using her real rank only when they were completely alone. We need to talk. Security monitoring picked up an anomaly last night, someone attempting to access the base command server from an unauthorized terminal. Catherine's focus sharpened instantly. Location bound. That's the problem. The terminal is in the officers' quarters B wing, where Parker and his group are housed. Do we know which specific terminal? Williams shook his head. The attempt was routed through multiple access points. Sophisticated work. Whoever did this knows our systems well. Or had help from someone who does, Catherine added. Any idea what they were trying to access? Personnel files primarily, including yours. Williams' expression darkened. Someone's checking your background, Commander. Let's hope your cover holds. Catherine nodded, her mind already calculating implications and next steps. Increase security on the ShadowNet installation. If someone's probing our systems, the new network could be either a target or a tool to help us catch them. Already done. There's something else you should know. Williams hesitated. General Hayes will be observing tomorrow's training directly. He'll be incognito as a senior NCO instructor, but his presence raises the stakes considerably. The pieces were aligning in a troubling pattern. Hayes' presence, the attempted security breach, Parker's interest in the new communication system, all pointing to a situation more volatile than initially briefed. The Red Cell exercise is scheduled for the day after tomorrow, Catherine noted. If I were planning to exploit a security vulnerability, that would be the perfect time. Maximum chaos systems running at capacity, multiple points of potential failure. Williams nodded grimly. My thoughts exactly. Whatever's going to happen, Commander, I believe it's going to happen during Red Cell, which gives us less than 48 hours to identify the threat and neutralize it. Then we'd better get to work, Catherine replied, her expression hardening with resolve. The mission parameters had just escalated dramatically, but the core objective remained unchanged. Identify the security leak, protect the integrity of the training program, and evaluate Parker's true potential as either an asset or a threat. As Williams departed, Catherine returned to the communications terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she implemented additional security protocols and trace programs. The coming days would test her cover identity, her skills, and potentially the safety of everyone at Fort Benning. In the quiet of the communications center, surrounded by the humming of servers and the soft glow of monitors, Lieutenant Commander Catherine Reynolds prepared for war, Not on some distant battlefield, but right here in the heart of America's military training establishment against an enemy who might be wearing the same uniform as those they sought to betray. Dawn broke over Fort Benning with military precision, the first rays of sunlight illuminating the mist hanging over the training grounds. Catherine moved silently through the auxiliary gym, arranging mats for her clandestine training session with Cadet Walker. Her shoulder throbbed dully, a persistent reminder of the mission that had brought her here. The door creaked open at exactly 0500. Sarah Walker entered her athletic frame, tense with a combination of determination and caution. She glanced around the empty gym before approaching Catherine. "You actually showed up," Walker said, surprise evident in her tone. "I said I would." Catherine gestured toward the mats. "Let's not waste time. Show me the takedown that's giving you trouble." For the next 45 minutes, Catherine guided Walker through a series of counters and escapes, carefully balancing her instruction to reveal enough expertise to be helpful without exposing her full capabilities. Walker proved to be a quick study, her movements becoming more fluid and confident with each repetition. "How did you learn all this?" Walker asked during a brief water break, wiping sweat from her brow. "This isn't standard training for communication specialists." Catherine took a measured sip from her water bottle, buying time to craft her response. "My father was a martial arts instructor before he joined up. Taught me since I could walk." "He must be proud of you." "He died in Iraq. Fallujah 2004. Walker's expression softened. "I'm sorry." Catherine shrugged, the practiced nonchalance of someone who had long ago learned to compartmentalize grief. "It's why I enlisted, carrying on the family tradition." "Is that why you chose communications, following in his footsteps?" "No." Catherine's gaze became distant. "He was infantry. I wanted something different. Something that would let me serve without—" She trailed off, allowing Walker to fill in the blanks with her own assumptions. The calculated vulnerability had its intended effect. Walker's guarded demeanor relaxed slightly. "My dad wanted me to be a nurse like my mom. Nearly disowned me when I enlisted instead. Said women don't belong in combat roles. And yet here you are, the only female candidate in your class." Pride flashed across Walker's face. "Yeah, here I am." She hesitated, then added, "Though some days it feels like I'm fighting two wars, one against the training obstacles and another against guys like Parker who think I don't belong." "Parker gives you a hard time." "Not directly. He's too smart for that. But he makes sure I get the hardest assignments, the heaviest gear during marches. Always pairs me with Thompson during hand-to-hand, knowing he outweighs me by 70 pounds. Walker's jaw tightened, and the instructors let him. They're all waiting for me to fail. Catherine demonstrated another counter technique, this one specifically designed to neutralize a larger opponent's weight advantage. "People underestimate women in this line of work, always have. We can use that." "How?" "Let them think you're weaker. Let them think you're slower. Then when it matters most—" Catherine executed a lightning-fast sweep that sent Walker tumbling to the mat, the move so smooth and unexpected that the cadet had no time to counter. "You show them exactly who you are." Walker lay on her back, momentarily stunned, then broke into a genuine smile. "Teach me that one next." As they continued training, Walker gradually opened up about the dynamics within her cadet class. Parker was unquestionably the alpha, his natural abilities and family connections giving him an aura of invincibility. Thompson functioned as his loyal lieutenant, enforcing Parker's will when necessary. Rodriguez kept to himself, brilliant in tactical planning, but reluctant to assert himself in the group's social hierarchy. "And then there's the nighttime training," Walker said, almost as an afterthought. Catherine kept her expression neutral, despite her immediate interest. "Nighttime training. Not official, just something a few of us female cadets do. Extra PT, some tactical exercises. We all know we're being held to a higher standard, so we push ourselves harder." Walker's expression darkened. "Rodriguez caught us last week. Hasn't said anything to the instructors, but I've seen him watching us." This was unexpected information, a potential lead Catherine hadn't anticipated. "Do you trust him?" Walker considered the question. "He's different from the others. Quieter, more thoughtful, but he's still part of Parker's inner circle. And in my experience, when it comes down to a choice between doing what's right and backing your buddies—" She shrugged, leaving the thought unfinished. The base loudspeaker crackled to life, announcing the impending start of morning formation. Their time was up. As they gathered their gear, Catherine made a calculated offer. Same time tomorrow. Walker nodded, a hint of gratitude in her eyes. I'd like that. And thank you for the help. Catherine watched her leave, mentally filing away the new information. The unofficial female training group could be useful both as additional eyes and ears around the base, and potentially as allies if the situation deteriorated. Rodriguez's interest in their activities was another thread to pull on. Was he reporting back to Parker, or did he have his own agenda? After a quick shower, Catherine made her way to the communications center to continue her ShadowNet installation. The work provided perfect cover for her true mission, allowing her to move freely throughout the base while accessing secure systems. By mid-morning, she had established a backdoor monitoring program that would alert her to any unusual access attempts on the base network. If someone was trying to compromise base security, she would know about it. Specialist Taylor. The voice behind her was unexpected. Catherine turned to find Cadet Nathan Parker standing in the doorway of the server room, his tall frame filling the space with an almost physical presence. He wore standard PT gear, a gray t-shirt and shorts that did little to disguise his athletic physique. Cadet Parker, she acknowledged, carefully maintaining her cover persona's appropriate deference to his cadet officer status. Can I help you with something? Parker stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the array of equipment with obvious interest. Just checking on the progress of our new communication system. The red cell exercise tomorrow will put it to the test. The core infrastructure is operational, Catherine replied, deliberately vague. Final configurations will be completed by this evening. Impressive work, especially for someone who just arrived. Parker moved closer, studying the terminal screen over her shoulder. You must have extensive experience with military communication systems. The comment was probing, testing her cover story. Catherine continued typing, neither confirming nor denying his subtle question. Is there something specific you need for the exercise, Cadet? Actually, yes. Parker produced a small flash drive from his pocket. The Tactical Planning Committee needs to ensure our communications protocols are compatible with the new system. This drive contains our encryption codes and frequency assignments. Every instinct in Catherine's body went on high alert. This was not standard procedure. Cadets would never be given responsibility for encryption protocols, especially not for a secure system installation. Parker was either testing her knowledge of proper security procedures or attempting to gain unauthorized access to the ShadowNet. I'm afraid I can't accept that, Cadet Parker, she said firmly. Security protocols require all encryption code transfers to go through the communications officer. Lieutenant Davis would need to authorize and oversee any integration. Parker's expression remained neutral, but Catherine detected a flicker of something in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or disappointment that his gambit had failed. He pocketed the drive with a casual shrug. Worth a try. The lieutenant is swamped with preparation for tomorrow, and we're on a tight schedule. He leaned against the server rack, his posture deliberately relaxed. You're not what I expected, Taylor. And what did you expect? Catherine continued, working her fingers, never pausing on the keyboard. Most specialists I've met are either career technicians with no ambition or young recruits marking time until their enlistment ends. His gaze was evaluative, searching. You don't fit either category. Catherine finally turned to face him directly. Perhaps you should reconsider your categories, Cadet. Parker smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his features from merely handsome to unexpectedly charming. Perhaps I should. He straightened, moving toward the door. I look forward to seeing how your system performs tomorrow, Specialist Taylor. It won't disappoint, Catherine replied evenly. After Parker left, Catherine immediately secured the room and initiated a deep scan of the system. If the flash drive had been a distraction for some other form of network intrusion, she needed to know immediately. The scan revealed nothing obvious, but Catherine's suspicions remained high. Parker's visit had been a reconnaissance mission, testing her reactions, probing for weaknesses, evaluating her as a potential ally or obstacle. The question was whether his interest stemmed from simple cadet ambition or something more sinister. She needed to report this interaction to Williams immediately. Reaching for her secure communication device, Catherine paused as her monitoring program flashed an alert on the main screen. Someone was attempting to access the personnel database again, this time from a terminal in the officers' quarters. Catherine quickly traced the access attempt, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she navigated through the base network. The intruder was good, bouncing their signal through multiple nodes to obscure the origin point. But Catherine was better. "Got you," she murmured, as the trace narrowed down to a specific terminal. Room 237, Rodriguez's quarters. This complicated matters. If Rodriguez was the leak, why would Parker try to gain access to the ShadowNet? Were they working together or pursuing separate agendas? Catherine downloaded the access logs and encrypted them for later analysis. She needed more information before reporting to Williams. If she identified the wrong person as the leak, the real culprit would go deeper underground, potentially compromising the entire operation. The rest of the day passed in a blur of technical work and covert observation. Catherine completed the ShadowNet installation ahead of schedule, ensuring the system would be fully operational for the Red Cell exercise, while simultaneously establishing hidden monitoring protocols that would allow her to track all communications during the event. That evening, as the base settled into its nighttime routine, Catherine made her way to the perimeter of the training grounds, where Walker had mentioned the unofficial female cadet training took place. Concealed in the shadows of a maintenance shed, she observed 5 women going through a grueling series of drills, obstacle courses, tactical movements, and combat scenarios far more advanced than their regular training. Walker was there leading a close-quarters battle simulation with impressive skill. The women moved with coordinated precision that spoke of weeks of dedicated practice. This wasn't just extra PT, this was specialized training preparing them for elite operations. A movement in the tree line caught Catherine's attention. She wasn't the only one watching. A figure detached from the shadows observing the training from a different angle. Even in the dim light, Catherine recognized Rodriguez's distinctive profile. She circled behind him, approaching with the silent movement techniques perfected through years of special operations. When she was just 3 feet behind him, she deliberately scuffed her boot against the ground. Rodriguez spun around his hand, instinctively dropping to where a sidearm would be if cadets were permitted to carry weapons during training. "Specialist Taylor," he said, recovering quickly. "You're out late." "So are you Cadet Rodriguez?" Catherine nodded toward the training group. "Interesting show." Rodriguez studied her face clearly, trying to assess whether she represented a threat to the unauthorized training session. "They're good," he said finally. "Better than most of the men in our class, if anyone bothered to notice." This wasn't the response Catherine had expected from one of Parker's inner circle. "Why are you watching them?" Professional interest. His gaze returned to the training ground. "And personal admiration. Do you know what they go through every day? The extra scrutiny, the higher standards, the constant need to prove themselves." "I might have some idea," Catherine replied carefully. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I imagine you do." He hesitated, then added, "Parker and Thompson don't understand. They've never had to fight for respect, just to enter the room. And you have?" The question was genuine. Rodriguez's personnel file had indicated a privileged background, similar to Parker's. "My father is Colombian," he said quietly, first-generation immigrant who became a surgeon. "Every day of my life, I've watched people assume he's the janitor instead of the chief of surgery until he puts on that white coat. So yes, specialist, I understand something about fighting other people's expectations." The revelation shifted Catherine's assessment of Rodriguez. His surveillance of the female cadets wasn't threatening, it was protective. And his presence in Parker's circle took on new significance. He wasn't a follower. He was a strategic ally positioned in where he could observe and potentially influence the power dynamics of the class. "Does Parker know you're here?" she asked. "Parker knows I sometimes take night walks to clear my head before big exercises." Rodriguez's expression remained neutral. What he doesn't know won't concern him. Before Catherine could respond, her secure communication device vibrated with an urgent alert. She checked it discreetly, a message from Williams requesting immediate contact. "Duty calls," she said, taking a step back. "Enjoy your night walk, cadet." Rodriguez nodded, turning back to watch the training session. "See you at Red Cell tomorrow, specialist. Should be quite a show." Something in his tone, a subtle emphasis on show, raised Catherine's suspicions once more. She filed the interaction away for later analysis and made her way to the designated secure meeting point Williams had established. The master sergeant was waiting in an equipment storage room in the base's maintenance section, his weathered face grim in the dim light. We have a problem, Commander. Catherine secured the door behind her. What's happened? I've been monitoring communications as you suggested. About an hour ago, an encrypted transmission was sent from the base to an unknown external receiver. The encryption was military grade, but not one of ours. This was the confirmation they'd been dreading. Origin point IM. That's where it gets complicated. The transmission came from the communications center piggybacking on a routine systems check. Catherine's mind raced. The communications center was locked down after I completed installation. Only authorized personnel have access. Exactly. Williams handed her a tablet displaying security footage. These are the only people who entered the center in the time window when the transmission occurred. Catherine scrolled through the images, Lieutenant Davis, two communications technicians, Master Sergeant Williams himself, and General Hayes still in his disguise as a regular NCO. Hayes accessed the communications center. This was unexpected. Officially, he was conducting a security inspection as part of his undercover evaluation of base readiness. Williams lowered his voice. But he was alone in there for 12 minutes. No witnesses, no oversight. The implication was staggering. You can't seriously suspect General Hayes of being the leak. I don't know what to think anymore, Commander, but I know this in counterintelligence. You follow the evidence, not your assumptions. And right now, the evidence points to someone with high-level access. Catherine studied the footage again, her tactical mind processing possibilities. If Hayes is conducting his own investigation, he might have sent a secure report to SOCOM headquarters using non-standard channels to avoid detection by the leak. Possible, Williams conceded. But why not inform me I'm his designated liaison on this base? Unless he suspects the leak is coming from within the command structure. The pieces were starting to align in a troubling pattern. Williams, who else knows about my real identity and mission? Just myself, Hayes, and Admiral Richards. And if Hayes doesn't trust you, then he wouldn't tell me about any separate operations he's running. Williams rubbed his face tiredly. This is getting complicated fast, Commander. Catherine made a decision. We stick to the original plan. I'll monitor all communications during Red Cell tomorrow. If someone's planning to exploit the exercise to exfiltrate sensitive information, we'll catch them in the act. And if it's Hayes himself, then God help us all, Catherine replied grimly, because it means our entire command structure is compromised at the highest level. The meeting concluded with heightened security protocols established for the exercise. Catherine returned to her quarters, mind churning with new variables and possibilities. Her room had been swept for surveillance devices earlier that day, allowing her a rare moment to drop her cover persona and think as Lieutenant Commander Reynolds rather than Specialist Taylor. She secured her door and extracted a hidden compartment from the base of her standard-issue footlocker. Inside was a secure satellite phone, a direct line to Admiral Richards that bypassed all base communication systems. Sierra Actual. Richards answered on the first ring, using the established code name for this operation. This is Foxtrot 7, Catherine replied. We have a situation. She briefed Richards on the developments, including the encrypted transmission, Rodriguez's suspicious behavior, Parker's probing, and the possibility, however remote, that Hayes himself might be involved. Richards listened silently until she finished. Your assessment, Commander? Too many variables, sir. Parker is definitely gathering intelligence, but whether for personal advancement or something more nefarious remains unclear. Rodriguez is conducting his own surveillance of female cadets, but possibly as a protective measure rather than a threat. And the encrypted transmission could be Hayes reporting to SOCOM through secure channels, or our leak has access to the highest levels of command, Richards finished for her. What does your gut tell you, Reynolds? Catherine considered the question carefully. In special operations, intuition was often as valuable as hard evidence, the subconscious processing of micro-details that the conscious mind might miss. My gut tells me we're looking at multiple agendas operating simultaneously, sir. Parker is ambitious and testing boundaries. Rodriguez is watching and waiting. And someone with high-level access is exploiting the confusion to cover their tracks. Red Cell is tomorrow. Yes, sir, 0900 hours. Then that's your moment of truth, Commander. All players will be making their moves during the chaos of the exercise. Richard's voice hardened with resolve. Stop the leak, identify the compromised personnel, and complete your evaluation of the candidates. If Hayes is involved, contain the situation, but do not, I repeat, Do not confront him directly. That's an order. Understood, sir. And Commander Richards' tone softened slightly. Watch your back. If our leak has penetrated command levels, your cover may already be compromised. The call ended, leaving Catherine alone with the weight of escalating stakes. What had begun as a relatively straightforward mission to evaluate officer candidates and identify a potential security leak had evolved into a complex counterintelligence operation with implications that could reach the highest levels of military command. She checked her weapons, the standard-issue sidearm she carried openly as part of her specialist role, and the compact combat knife concealed in a hidden ankle sheath. If her cover was blown, she might need both before this mission was over. Sleep came in brief tactical intervals, 20 minutes at a time, allowing her body to rest, while her mind remained alert to potential threats. By 500, she was fully awake and preparing for what promised to be the most challenging day of the operation. Her morning session with Walker proceeded as planned, though Catherine deliberately focused on defensive techniques that would serve the cadet well in the coming exercise. As they wrapped up their training, Catherine offered a cryptic warning. Stay sharp today. Red Cell isn't always what it seems. Walker gave her a curious look. You've been through it before. Let's just say I've seen similar exercises go sideways. Catherine gathered her gear. Trust your instincts, not just your orders. Walker nodded, taking the advice seriously. Will you be involved in the exercise? Communications support. I'll be monitoring from the command center. Good. Walker managed a tense smile. At least there'll be one person in there who doesn't want to see me fail. Catherine watched her leave, troubled by the growing connection she felt with the determined cadet. Professional detachment was essential for mission success, but Walker's situation resonated too closely with her own experience as a woman in special operations. The base was already buzzing with preparation for Red Cell as Catherine made her way to the communications center. Red Cell was a stress test exercise designed to simulate a base takeover by hostile forces. Aggressor teams composed of experienced instructors would infiltrate the facility, challenging the cadets to respond to a chaotic, high-pressure environment where normal command structures were disrupted. It was the perfect cover for extracting sensitive information or testing base vulnerabilities, which made it the most likely moment for their security leak to act. Catherine arrived at the communications center early, performing final checks on the ShadowNet system while secretly activating her monitoring protocols. By 08:30, the command staff began arriving to oversee the exercise. Lieutenant Davis was there along with the base commander and various section chiefs. At 08:45, Master Sergeant Williams arrived, exchanging a subtle nod with Catherine that confirmed their preparations were in place. And at precisely 08:50, Master Sergeant Miller, General Hayes in his undercover identity, entered the command center, his keen eyes taking in every detail of the operation. Communications check, Lieutenant Davis called out. All sections report. Catherine monitored the responses from each training area, noting that all systems were functioning normally. On a secondary screen visible only to her, her security protocols tracked all data moving through the base network. If anyone attempted to access or extract sensitive information during the exercise, she would know immediately. At exactly 0900, the base alarm system activated. Red strobing lights and the wail of sirens signaled the start of Red Cell. Throughout the facility, aggressor teams would now be deploying smoke grenades, simulated gunfire, and other chaos-inducing elements designed to test the cadets' response under pressure. All communications switching to Secure Channel Alpha, Davis announced. Specialist Taylor, confirm encryption protocols active. Encryption active and verified, Catherine responded, her fingers moving across her console with practiced efficiency. Simultaneously, she monitored her hidden security screen, watching for any anomalous data patterns. The first 30 minutes of the exercise proceeded according to plan. Reports flooded in from various sections of the base as the aggressor teams engaged with cadet defensive positions. Catherine noted with approval that Walker's female training group was performing exceptionally well, holding their assigned sector against multiple assault attempts. Parker's A-team was also impressive, adapting quickly to the chaotic environment and showing genuine tactical creativity. Despite her suspicions about his activities, Catherine had to acknowledge his natural leadership abilities in crisis situations. It was at the 45-minute mark that her security protocols detected the first anomaly, a data packet moving through the system with an encryption signature that didn't match either standard military protocols or the ShadowNet parameters she had established. Someone was using the exercise as cover to transmit information out of the base. Catherine isolated the transmission, tracing its path through the network while maintaining her outward role as communications specialist. The source was difficult to pinpoint. The signal was bouncing through multiple nodes, creating a digital shell game designed to confuse tracking attempts. As she worked, another alert flashed on her screen. A second unauthorized transmission, this one originating from somewhere in the training areas rather than the command center. Two separate security breaches occurring simultaneously. Catherine caught William's eye across the room, giving a subtle signal that indicated they had a situation. He acknowledged with an equally discreet nod and began moving toward her station. Before he could reach her, the command center door burst open. One of the aggressor team leaders, a grizzled former Ranger instructor known as Master Guns, entered with his team, all carrying training weapons loaded with simulation rounds. "Command center is now under hostile control," he announced with professional satisfaction. "All personnel are considered captured." This was standard Red Cell procedure. The command center was always a primary target, and its capture forced the cadets to continue operations without central coordination. The command staff would now act as prisoners, adding another layer of realism to the exercise. What wasn't standard was the intensity in Master Gun's eyes as they locked onto Catherine's. There was recognition there and something else. Suspicion. Calculation. "You," he said, pointing directly at her. "Step away from the console." Catherine complied, maintaining her cover as a communications specialist who would naturally follow instructions during a training exercise. But every instinct warned her that something was very wrong. Master Guns was deviating from the exercise script. "Hands on your head," he ordered, approaching her workstation with deliberate steps. "Don't touch anything else on that system." The command center had gone quiet, the other staff watching the unexpected confrontation with confusion. Williams had frozen halfway across the room, his expression carefully neutral, but his body language alert. "Sir," Catherine kept her voice appropriately deferential for her cover identity, "is this part of the exercise parameters?" Master Guns had ignored the question, examining her workstation with focused intensity. His hand moved to his comm device. "Actual, this is Master Guns. I have eyes on the target. Communications center. Proceeding with secondary protocol." The coded message sent a chill through Catherine's spine. This was not part of the standard Red Cell exercise. Master Guns was operating under separate orders, orders that apparently identified her as a target. The question was, who had issued those orders and what did they know about her real identity and mission? As Master Guns moved closer, Catherine assessed her options with cold precision. Maintaining cover meant continuing to act as a confused specialist caught in an unexpected training scenario. Breaking cover meant potentially compromising the entire counterintelligence operation. But if Master Guns or his team made a move against her, the decision would be made for her. The tension in the room built to an almost unbearable level as Master Guns circled behind her, his training weapon still directed at her center mass. "Interesting modifications you've made to our communication system, Specialist Taylor, or should I call you by another name?" The implied knowledge of her true identity confirmed Catherine's fears. Her cover was compromised. The only remaining questions were how much they knew, who had exposed her, and what their true objective was. Before she could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the base, not the scripted alarms of the Red Cell exercise, but the genuine emergency alert system signaling a real-world threat. "This is not part of the exercise," Lieutenant Davis announced, his confusion evident. "Repeat, this is not part of the exercise protocol." Master Gun's attention shifted momentarily to the new alarms, and in that split second of distraction, Catherine made her decision. Cover or no cover, something was very wrong at Fort Benning, and her primary mission now was to determine who had compromised base security and why. The real threat was just beginning to reveal itself, and Catherine Reynolds, not Specialist Taylor, would meet it head-on. The command center erupted into controlled chaos as the real-world alarms continued blaring throughout the base. Officers rushed to stations trying to determine the nature of the emergency while separating genuine threats from Red Cell exercise scenarios. "Security breach at the armory," a voice announced over the emergency channel. "Multiple armed intruders. This is not part of the exercise." In the momentary confusion, Catherine made her move. With calculated precision, she executed a combat maneuver that appeared to be nothing more than a stumble from Master Guns' perspective. As she fell forward, her hand swept across her console, activating the emergency security protocols she had embedded in the ShadowNet system. Throughout the base, digital evidence was now being captured and secured every communication, every access attempt, every data packet moving through the network. Whatever happened next, there would be a record that not even the highest-ranking officer could erase. Master Guns grabbed her arm roughly, clearly abandoning the pretense of a training exercise. "Don't move," he growled, his grip tightening to the point of pain. Catherine locked eyes with Williams across the room, a silent exchange that conveyed volumes. The Master Sergeant gave an almost imperceptible nod, authorization to break cover if necessary. "Sir, we have confirmed hostile action at the armory." Lieutenant Davis reported, his voice tight with controlled tension. "Security cameras show 8 armed individuals using what appear to be live weapons. They've neutralized the duty guards and are accessing the weapons cache." General Hayes, still in his Master Sergeant Miller disguise, stepped forward with the unmistakable authority of a flag officer. "Initiate full base lockdown, all cadets to secure positions. Deploy the quick reaction force immediately." The transformation was instant, the room's atmosphere shifting as command staff recognized the general's true identity despite his enlisted uniform. Hayes turned toward Master Guns, his expression hardening. "Release Specialist Taylor immediately, Master Sergeant." Master Guns hesitated, his gaze flickering between Hayes and Catherine. The moment stretched laden with unspoken tension before he finally loosened his grip. Catherine stepped away, subtly positioning herself with clear sight lines to both exits while maintaining a non-threatening posture. "General, we have intelligence suggesting," Master Guns began. Hayes cut him off. "We'll discuss your intelligence later, Master Sergeant. Right now we have armed intruders on my base." He turned to Catherine. "Specialist Taylor, secure all communications channels. No transmissions in or out except through ShadowNet. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Catherine moved back to her console, fingers flying across the keyboard as she implemented the general's orders while simultaneously monitoring her security protocols. The screen revealed what she had suspected: the intruders at the armory weren't random terrorists. They were a coordinated team executing a precision operation, their movements suggesting military training. "General," she called out, maintaining her specialist persona, "security cameras show the intruders heading toward the training areas where the cadets are conducting Red Cell." Hayes moved to her station, studying the footage with narrowed eyes. "They're not after weapons," he said quietly. "They're targeting the cadets." Catherine's mind raced, calculating possibilities and motivations. "Or specific cadets," she suggested, careful to maintain appropriate deference to Hayes's rank, despite the urgency of the situation. Understanding dawned in Hayes's eyes. "Parker," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Son of General William Parker, the next likely chairman of the Joint Chiefs." The pieces snapped into place with crystal clarity. This wasn't just about stealing military secrets or compromising base security. This was a high-value targeting operation aimed at the son of one of America's most senior military leaders, potentially for ransom leverage or even assassination. "I need a direct line to the cadets in Training Zone Echo," Hayes ordered. Catherine established the connection but shook her head grimly. "No response, sir. Communications in that sector appear to be jammed." "That's where Parker's team was deployed," Williams confirmed, joining them at the console. Hayes straightened, his decision already made. "Master Sergeant Williams, assemble a response team. We move out in 5 minutes. "Sir," Catherine interjected, careful to balance appropriate specialist concern with the urgency of the situation. "The ShadowNet system has a backup communication function that might penetrate the jamming. It requires direct access to the local relay node in Sector Echo." Hayes studied her for a beat longer than necessary, his expression unreadable. "You know how to activate this function, specialist?" "Yes, sir. I installed it myself." "Then you're coming with us." He turned to Davis. "Lieutenant, you have command of the center. No one in or out without my direct authorization." As Hayes assembled his response team, Catherine caught Williams' eye. The Master Sergeant moved close enough to speak privately. "Commander," he whispered, using her real rank, "this changes everything. If the intruders are targeting Parker, then our internal security leak might be connected to an external operation," Catherine finished. "And we still don't know who compromised my cover to Master Guns. Watch your back out there. Trust no one, not even Hayes." Catherine gave a slight nod before gathering her equipment. Within minutes, she was moving across the base with Hayes Williams and a four-man security team. They carried live weapons, now the exercise protocols abandoned in the face of genuine threat. The training areas were eerily quiet, the smoke from red cell exercise grenades still hanging in the air, mixing with the morning mist to create a ghostly battlefield atmosphere. Occasional bursts of simulated gunfire echoed in the distance, cadets still following exercise protocols, unaware of the real danger approaching their positions. Parker's team was defending the command building in Sector Echo, Williams informed them as they moved in tactical formation. Walker's group was providing perimeter security. Catherine's concern deepened. Both Parker and Walker were potentially in the intruder's path. Whatever game was being played here, the cadets were now pawns in a deadly serious operation. As they approached Sector Echo, the unmistakable sound of live gunfire erupted ahead of them, the sharp, distinctive crack of military-grade weapons rather than the muffled pop of exercise rounds. Double time, Hayes ordered, and the team accelerated toward the threat. They arrived at the perimeter of a mock urban warfare training facility, a series of concrete structures designed to simulate a small town. The gunfire was coming from the central building, a two-story structure that served as the command post in the exercise scenario. Catherine scanned the area with practiced efficiency, noting signs of combat shell casings from live ammunition, blood drops on the ground, and the ominous absence of exercise participants who should have been defending this position. A figure darted between buildings approximately 50 meters ahead, a cadet in training gear moving with tactical precision despite obvious stress. Catherine recognized Walker's distinctive movement pattern immediately. "Sir," she alerted Hayes, pointing toward the figure. "Cover me," Hayes ordered, then called out, "Cadet Walker, over here!" Walker froze momentarily, then changed direction toward their position, keeping low and using available cover with impressive skill. When she reached them, her face was streaked with sweat and dirt, her eyes wide with controlled fear. "General Hayes," she gasped, recognizing him despite his disguise. "They have Parker, 3 men with actual weapons. They killed the exercise controllers and took him from our position." "Are you hurt, Cadet?" Hayes asked quickly, assessing her condition. "No, sir. I was on perimeter patrol when they breached. I saw them take Parker into the command building." Walker's gaze shifted to Catherine's, surprise registering momentarily before focusing back on the crisis at hand. "They're professionals, sir. Military trained. Their leader called Parker by name. They knew exactly who they were looking for." "How many hostiles total?" Williams asked. "I counted 8 initially, 3 with Parker, the rest securing the perimeter." Hayes nodded grimly. "Specialist Taylor needs to access the communications relay in that sector to break through the jamming. Can you show her the location?" Walker nodded. "East side of the command building, sir. Underground access point." "Good. You'll escort Taylor to the relay." Hayes turned to Williams. "Master Sergeant, you and 2 men establish a perimeter here. I'll take the remaining security team and create a diversion to draw attention away from Taylor and Walker." Catherine knew this was the moment her cover would be tested most severely. If she performed too well in a combat situation, her specialist identity would be questioned. If she appeared too incompetent, the mission might fail and lives would be lost. She opted for competent but nervous, the demeanor of someone with basic combat training facing their first real-world threat. "Sir, I should inform you that I'm only qualified on the M9 sidearm. My combat training is limited to basic requirements." Hayes handed her a pistol. "Stay behind Walker, focus on your technical objective, and leave the fighting to us if possible." His gaze held hers for a meaningful moment. "I'm counting on you, Specialist." The group separated, with Hayes leading his team toward the western approach to the building, while Catherine followed Walker through a series of defensive positions that offered cover toward the eastern access point. As they moved, Walker whispered, "You're not just a communications specialist, are you?" Catherine maintained focus on their surroundings. "What makes you say that? The way you move, the way you scan, the way you hold that weapon." Walker's voice carried no accusation, only calm certainty. "Whoever you are, I'm glad you're here." Before Catherine could respond, gunfire erupted from the western side of the complex, Hayes' diversion in a full effect. They used the distraction to move quickly to the eastern access point, a reinforced door leading to a subterranean level that housed various utility systems. Walker took up a defensive position while Catherine worked on the electronic lock, bypassing it within seconds. They slipped inside, closing the door behind them as distant gunfire continued. The utility level was dimly lit by emergency lighting, the regular power apparently disabled by the intruders. Catherine moved confidently through the narrow corridors, having memorized the base schematics as part of her mission preparation. The relay node should be through here, she said, approaching a secure door marked Communications. Authorized personnel only. As Catherine reached for the door, Walker's hand shot out, stopping her. Wait, the cadet whispered, pointing to a nearly invisible filament stretched across the doorframe at ankle height. Tripwire. Catherine felt a surge of respect for the cadet's observational skills. The wire was professional grade, virtually invisible, unless you knew exactly what to look for. Good catch, she acknowledged, carefully examining the setup. Not standard military issue. This is specialist equipment. We're working together. They disarmed the trap and entered the communications room. Inside, the relay node for the ShadowNet system glowed with operational lights, but additional hardware had been attached to it, signal jammers designed to block all standard communications while allowing specific encrypted channels to function. Someone really doesn't want the cadets calling for help, Walker observed, covering the door while Catherine examined the equipment. This isn't something you set up in 5 minutes, Catherine replied, studying the sophisticated jamming array. This was pre-positioned probably days ago. Whoever these people are, they've had inside help. As she worked to disable the jammers and restore communications, Catherine's mind processed the implications. The attack coinciding with Red Cell was no accident. The precision targeting of Parker was not opportunistic. This operation had been planned extensively with inside knowledge of base operations and security protocols. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she implemented the ShadowNet override commands. Almost there, she murmured, watching as systems came back online. Once communications are restored, Hayes can call in the quick reaction force from the main base. A sudden commotion from above, heavy footsteps and shouted commands interrupted her work. Someone was entering the utility level. We've got company, Walker whispered, taking up a firing position with the calm precision Catherine had observed during their training sessions. Catherine completed the final command sequence and activated the system. Communications restored, she confirmed, drawing her weapon and moving to support Walker. The door burst open. Thompson entered, his cadet uniform torn and dirty, a wild look in his eyes. He froze at the sight of Walker's weapon aimed at his center mass. Don't shoot, it's me, he gasped, hands raised. Thompson. Walker kept her weapon trained on him. What are you doing here? Running for my life, he replied, his voice cracking with stress. They've got Parker. They shot Rodriguez when he tried to stop them. Catherine studied Thompson carefully, noting the lack of visible injuries despite his claimed flight from danger. How did you find this location, cadet? It's not on the standard base maps. Thompson's eyes darted to her, then back to Walker. I followed the access tunnels. I was trying to find a way out to get help. It was plausible, but something in his manner triggered Catherine's finely tuned instincts. His breathing was too controlled for someone who had been running for his life. His hands were steady despite the claimed stress. And most tellingly, there was no surprise at finding them in this secure area. Walker, Catherine said quietly, check him for weapons. Thompson's expression shifted subtly. There's no time for this. We need to... The rest of his sentence was lost as he launched into sudden motion, drawing a concealed pistol from his waistband with practiced speed. His first shot went wide as Walker threw herself sideways, returning fire immediately. Catherine's training took over. Her weapon barked twice, both rounds finding their mark in Thompson's right shoulder, a disabling shot rather than a lethal one. The cadet cried out in pain, his weapon clattering to the floor as he stumbled back against the wall. Walker recovered instantly, kicking Thompson's dropped pistol away and covering him while Catherine secured his hands with zip ties from her equipment pouch. Why, Thompson? Walker demanded, her voice tight with betrayal and anger. These are your brothers and sisters in arms. Thompson glared up at them, blood seeping through his uniform where Catherine's bullets had struck. You have no idea what's really happening here, he spat. This is bigger than all of us. Catherine checked his wounds, painful but not life-threatening, before searching him thoroughly. In his pocket, she found a communications device, unlike standard military issue. The encryption signature matched the anomalous transmission she had detected earlier. Who are you working for? She demanded, all pretense of being just a specialist now abandoned. Thompson's laugh was bitter. You think I'm the mastermind? I'm just the messenger. The operation was already in motion long before I was recruited. Who recruited you? Catherine pressed. Someone who knows what's really happening in our military. Someone who understands that sacrifices have to be made. A cold certainty settled in Catherine's stomach. Thompson wasn't the security leak, he was merely an asset, a tool being used by someone with much higher access and authority. Walker, keep him secured, Catherine ordered, moving back to the communications console. I need to warn Hayes. She established a direct channel to the general's team. General Hayes, this is Taylor, communications restored. Be advised we have Thompson in custody. He's working with the intruders. Hayes's voice came back immediately tense with controlled urgency. Good work, Taylor. We've located Parker. He's being held in the main room of the command building. At least 3 hostiles with military-grade weapons. Sir Thompson suggests this operation has high-level backing. Proceed with extreme caution. Understood. Maintain your position and... Hayes's transmission cut off suddenly, replaced by static. Catherine tried to re-establish contact without success. Either the general had deliberately cut communication or someone else had interrupted the transmission. What now? Walker asked, still covering Thompson. Catherine made a rapid decision. We need to get to that command building. Hayes might be walking into a trap. And him, Walker nodded toward Thompson. Catherine secured the wounded cadet to a sturdy pipe with additional restraints. He'll keep for now. The bleeding is controlled. As they prepared to move out, Thompson called after them. You're too late. The exchange is already happening. Parker for the access codes. Catherine paused. What access codes? Thompson's smile was cold despite his pain. To ShadowNet, of course, the quantum encryption system that's supposed to be unhackable. Turns out everything has a price. The implications hit Catherine like a physical blow. This wasn't just about Parker as a high-value target. This was about leveraging his kidnapping to force a senior military official, his father, General William Parker, to compromise national security by revealing access codes to America's most advanced military communication system. Walker, change of plans. Catherine said, her mind rapidly recalibrating the mission parameters. We need to stop that exchange at all costs. They moved quickly through the utility level, finding an access point that would bring them up inside the command building itself. As they ascended, Catherine made a difficult decision. Her cover was irreparably blown now, but the mission had evolved beyond her original parameters. Stopping the compromise of ShadowNet was now the priority, even if it meant revealing her true identity and capabilities. Walker, she said quietly as they approached the access hatch. When we get up there, follow my lead exactly. No questions, no hesitation. Walker studied her face for a moment, then nodded. I've been following your lead since we started training together. I'm not stopping now. The access hatch led to a storage area adjacent to the main room of the command building. Through the thin wall, they could hear voices, tense negotiations underway. The code's General Parker. That's all we require. Then your son walks free. The response came in a strained voice that Catherine recognized as Nathan Parker's. My father will never compromise national security, even for me. You've wasted your time. A sharp sound, the unmistakable impact of a hand striking flesh followed by a grunt of pain. Your faith in your father's principles is touching Cadet Parker. Unfortunately, we've already had quite a productive conversation with him. The only question remaining is which matters more to him, his son or his country. Catherine peered through a crack in the door, assessing the situation. The main room contained 4 armed men in tactical gear surrounding Parker, who was bound to a chair in the center. His face showed evidence of rough handling, but his expression remained defiant. No sign of Hayes or his team, which was concerning. She pulled back, whispering to Walker. 4 hostiles. Parker is alive but restrained. No visual on Hayes or his team. Plan, Walker asked simply. Catherine checked her weapon. Checked. Create chaos extract. Parker neutralized threats in that order. Before they could move, a new voice entered the conversation from the main room, a voice that sent ice through Catherine's veins. The exchange is proceeding as planned, announced Master Guns, entering the room from the opposite side. General William Parker has agreed to our terms. The access codes will be transmitted once his son is confirmed safe. The betrayal was stunning, but explains so much. Master Guns' suspicious behavior, his recognition of Catherine as a target, the pre-positioned equipment. He wasn't just involved, he was coordinating the operation. And Hayes, one of the armed men, asked. Neutralized, Master Guns replied with cold efficiency. His security team as well. They won't be interrupting our transaction. Catherine's grip tightened on her weapon. Hayes and his team taken out Parker being used as leverage to compromise national security, and Master Guns, a trusted senior instructor, revealed as a traitor. The situation had deteriorated beyond worst-case scenarios. New plan, she whispered to Walker. On my signal target, the lights. Then we move. Catherine reached into her pocket, extracting a small device that had been disguised as a communications tool. In reality, it was a specialized flashbang grenade developed for close-quarters hostage extraction, non-lethal, but extremely disorienting to anyone not expecting it. She nodded to Walker, then tossed the device through the door crack into the main room, while simultaneously shielding her eyes. The explosion of light and sound was immediate and overwhelming. Catherine burst through the door in the ensuing chaos, Walker right behind her. Moving with the fluid precision that had made her a legend in special operations, Catherine neutralized the closest armed man with a debilitating strike to the brachial plexus, the nerve cluster controlling arm function. Walker demonstrated her excellent training by instantly targeting the lights as instructed, plunging the room into darkness, broken only by emergency lighting. In the dim red glow, Catherine moved toward Parker, while Walker engaged a second hostile with remarkable efficiency for a cadet. The remaining two gunmen recovered quickly, professional enough to orient despite the flashbang's effects. They raised their weapons, but Catherine was already in motion. She executed a perfectly timed slide across the floor, firing twice as she moved. Both shots found their targets with surgical precision, weapon hands disabled, rather than kill shots. Master Guns, showing the combat awareness that had made him a respected instructor, had already taken cover behind a concrete pillar. Reynolds, he called out using her real name. Stand down. This operation is sanctioned. Sanctioned by whom? Catherine demanded, positioning herself between Parker and the remaining threats. By people who understand the bigger picture, Master Guns replied. People who know that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for national security. Compromising ShadowNet isn't national security, Catherine countered, working to free Parker from his restraints while maintaining her firing position. It's treason. Master Guns emerged partially from cover, his weapon trained in her general direction. You think this is about selling secrets to enemies? This is about ensuring America maintains control of its own technology. The quantum encryption in ShadowNet was developed with backdoor access points that even our own military doesn't know about. Foreign entities could be listening to everything right now. The claim was startling enough to give Catherine momentary pause. Was it possible? Could the nation's most secure communication system have been compromised? From within, her hesitation gave Master Guns an opening. He lunged forward, firing a controlled burst that forced Catherine to dive for cover, temporarily separated from Parker. Walker, demonstrating courage beyond her years, immediately moved to protect the still restrained cadet, returning fire with disciplined precision that kept Master Guns at bay. As Catherine prepared to re-engage, the main door to the room burst open. General Hayes entered, blood streaming from a wound on his temple, but his weapon steady in his hands. Behind him came Williams and the remainder of his security team, battered but operational. Stand down, Master Guns, Hayes commanded, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. It's over. Master Guns hesitated, clearly calculating his diminishing options. You don't understand what's at stake, General. I understand treason when I see it, Hayes replied coldly. And I understand that you've been played. There are no backdoors in the ShadowNet. That was disinformation fed to your handlers to expose their network. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Master Guns' face. That's impossible. I've seen the documentation. The evidence was fabricated by counterintelligence, Hayes interrupted. Just like your extraction team was allowed onto this base under surveillance. We've been tracking your operation for months, waiting for you to expose your entire network. Catherine watched the realization dawn on Master Guns' face, the devastating understanding that his betrayal had been anticipated and exploited, that he had been nothing more than an unwitting tool in a much larger counterintelligence operation. In that moment of psychological defeat, Master Guns made his final mistake. He swung his weapon toward Hayes in a last desperate act of defiance. Catherine moved without hesitation, 3 precise shots in rapid succession. Master Guns dropped to his knees, his weapon clattering uselessly to the floor, his expression frozen in shock as he registered the fatal wounds. The room fell silent except for the ragged breathing of the combatants and the distant wail of approaching security forces. Hayes crossed to Master Guns' fallen form, checking for vitals and finding none. His gaze lifted to Catherine, recognition and respect evident in his eyes. "Well done, Commander Reynolds," he said quietly. Catherine nodded, holstering her weapon, as Williams and his team secured the remaining hostiles. Walker stood frozen, her expression cycling through shock, confusion, and dawning comprehension as she processed Hayes' words. "Commander," she repeated, staring at Catherine. Hayes turned to Parker, who was being freed from his restraints by a security team member. "Cadet Parker, are you injured?" "Nothing serious, sir," Parker replied, his voice steady despite the ordeal he had endured. His gaze shifted to Catherine, studying her with new awareness. "Commander Reynolds, I presume?" Catherine straightened to her full height, the specialist posture completely abandoned now that her cover was blown. "Lieutenant Commander Catherine Reynolds, Naval Special Warfare Development Group." The revelation hung in the air as the security team completed processing the scene. Walker approached Catherine slowly, a mixture of emotions playing across her face. "All this time you were evaluating us?" she asked. "Among other things," Catherine replied honestly. "My primary mission was to identify a security leak within the training facility. Evaluating candidates for special operations was a secondary objective." Parker joined them, his usual confidence tempered by the gravity of recent events. "And what was your evaluation of me, Commander, before all this happened?" Catherine considered him thoughtfully. "Talented, natural leader, but too focused on proving your superiority rather than earning genuine respect." Instead of the defensive response she might have expected, Parker nodded solemnly. "Fair assessment. Recent events have provided some perspective, Pamao." General Hayes approached, having completed his initial situation report to Base Command. "The base is secure. All hostile elements have been contained or neutralized. The Quick Reaction Force is conducting a final sweep, but it appears Master Guns' team was limited to the 8 operators we've accounted for." "And Thompson?" Catherine asked. "In custody and receiving medical attention," Williams confirmed. "He's talking already, trying to cut a deal. Claims he was recruited through an intermediary who appealed to his resentment about family connections determining military advancement." Hayes turned to Catherine. "Commander Reynolds, I owe you an explanation. Your cover was never intended to be permanent. We needed someone of your capabilities to help flush out the security leak, but we also needed the cadets to see the truth eventually." "The truth, sir?" Catherine asked. "That competence isn't determined by rank, gender, or family connections." Hayes gestured to Walker and Parker. "Some of our best future leaders are those who recognize excellence regardless of its package." Catherine understood then that her mission had been more complex than she'd realized. She hadn't just been hunting a security leak or evaluating candidates. She had been part of a living object lesson, one that Parker, Walker, and the other cadets would carry forward into their careers. "General," she said, "permission to speak freely." Hayes nodded. "Always, Commander." "Next time you use me as bait in a counterintelligence operation, I'd appreciate a more thorough briefing." A rare smile crossed Hayes' weathered features. "Noted, Commander." He turned to address the assembled security team and cadets. "What happened here today will be classified at the highest levels. Official reports will indicate a rogue infiltration attempt during a training exercise, successfully repelled by base security forces." As the scene was secured and the wounded attended to, Catherine found herself standing with Walker and Parker in a quiet corner of the room. "So what happens now, Commander?" Walker asked. "Now," Catherine replied, "I complete my evaluations. And based on what I've seen today, I believe both of you have the potential for special operations should you choose that path." Parker looked genuinely surprised. "Even after everything that's happened, after my behavior?" "True leadership isn't about never making mistakes, Cadet Parker. It's about how you learn from them." Catherine fixed him with a direct gaze. "Your actions during the crisis, refusing to compromise national security, RC, even at personal risk, demonstrated the core values we look for." Parker absorbed this with thoughtful silence while Walker squared her shoulders with newfound confidence. "I want to be like you," she said simply, "doing the work that matters, regardless of recognition." "Then keep training," Catherine told her. "Keep pushing your limits. And remember that your greatest strength isn't physical, It's your ability to see what others miss. 1 year later, Catherine stood on the reviewing stand at Fort Benning, watching the graduation ceremony for Parker and Walker's class. She wore her formal naval uniform, now no longer hiding behind a specialist's insignia. Parker led the class as honor graduate, his former arrogance transformed into quiet confidence. Walker graduated second in the class, the highest-ranking female cadet in the Academy's history. Both had received special operations recommendations, their files marked with Hayes's personal endorsement. Williams, now promoted to senior master sergeant, joined Catherine at the railing. "Quite a transformation," he observed, "especially Parker." "Nothing transforms perspective like having your assumptions shattered," Catherine replied. "Speaking of transformations," Williams nodded toward the far side of the parade ground, "your legacy continues." Catherine followed his gaze to where a new class of cadets was assembling for their first day of training. Among the instructors was a familiar face. Rodriguez, recovered from his wounds and now serving as a tactical instructor. He was demonstrating a technique to a mixed group of male and female cadets, his manner respectful and encouraging regardless of gender. "The Reynolds Protocol," Williams explained. "Hayes made it official after you left. All cadets now receive specialized training in recognizing and valuing competence, regardless of rank or background. The incident with master guns is used as a case study in security awareness." Catherine watched as Parker and Walker received their commissions, standing tall as second lieutenants ready to begin their careers as officers. They had learned the most valuable lesson any leader could master, that true strength comes not from domination or privilege, but from recognizing excellence in all its forms. As the ceremony concluded, Parker and Walker approached her, rendering perfect salutes. "Lieutenant Parker and Lieutenant Walker reporting as ordered, Commander," Parker announced formally. Catherine returned their salutes. "Congratulations to you both. You've earned those bars." "We had an excellent teacher," Walker replied, her expression conveying deeper gratitude than words could express. Parker nodded in agreement. "You showed us what it really means to be a quiet professional. I won't forget that lesson." As they spoke, a group of new female cadets passed by, watching Walker with undisguised admiration. The legacy was already continuing, each generation teaching the next barriers and falling not through proclamation, but through demonstrated excellence. Catherine's secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. A new mission was waiting, another challenge requiring her unique combination of tactical expertise and strategic thinking. The work never ended for operators like her, the silent warriors who served without expectation of recognition or glory. "Duty calls?" Williams asked, noting her expression. "Always does," Catherine confirmed. She shook hands with Parker and Walker one final time. "Remember, leadership isn't about who you are or what rank you hold. It's about what you do when everything is on the line." As she walked away from Fort Benning, Catherine reflected on the mission that had brought her here and the unexpected lessons it had yielded. Her purpose had been to identify a security threat and evaluate potential operators. In accomplishing that mission, she had demonstrated a truth more powerful than any training manual could convey. True strength is quiet competence, speaks for itself, and the most dangerous person in any room is rarely the loudest. Lieutenant Commander Catherine Reynolds disappeared into the gathering dusk, another mission awaiting another challenge to face. Behind her, a new generation of leaders stood ready to follow her example, not because of rank or privilege, but because she had shown them the power of silent competence and uncompromising excellence. The legacy of the quiet professional continued passed from one generation to the next, ensuring that America's defenders would always value substance over show competence, over confidence, and character over credentials. In the world of special operations, where the stakes are measured in lives and national security, there is no room for prejudice or presumption. There is only the mission, the team, and the unwavering commitment to excellence, regardless of who delivers it.